get it started. Hey, John, are you going to go to that business roundtable tomorrow at 9?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, Jeff, I forgot to tell you about that. They're having a community business roundtable. Can't go at 9?
Tomorrow at 9 I could go, but John hasn't invited me, and he's a Chamber of Commerce guy. So
Isn't it put on? It's put on by the city, isn't it?
Yeah, the city put it out. So they're the ones that did the outreach.
Or lack thereof.
So
Yeah.
Dan Singer, I guess I have to
Rattle his cage a little bit.
rattle his cage and ask what the heck.
Him or Jonathan Royas, one of the two of them. So they just reached out to me and said, can you get this out to everybody right about an hour ago? So, so I'm working on it right now on another computer, trying to get the word out,
Send that invite to Jeff.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I can be there at 9 tomorrow. We won't be at design day till like 1, right, David?
And David, I see you had a In-N-Out cup.
No way. You did not, did you?
There's an In-N-Out right by Marriott, so I grabbed it on my way back.
Oh,
Yeah.
just the drink,
Isn't that who's catering tomorrow?
No, of course not. We can do better than that, Dr.
What do you mean? How dare you? All
Probably,
right.
a lot of us probably would have been very happy with it.
I know.
Yeah, a couple more people in the waiting room.
Yeah, I got him. All right. Well, I will call this meeting to order at 2:05. Let me do a roll call. Gabino Aguirre, not present. Nidia Bello, I think is present. Mary Doan, not present. Elizabeth Garcia, not present. Fabiola Gomez, not present. Todd McWhirter, present. John Marquez,
Present.
present. Jerry Mead, present. David Moore, present. Lorenzo Moraza, not present. Kevin Olson,
Here,
Mark Robertson,
Present.
Hilda Sanchez, I don't see, not present. Daniel Sandoval, I am present. Dan Singer, not present. And Jeffrey Weinstein, who is present. All right. Now, let me go ahead and share, if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Can I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Todd moved. Second?
Second.
Jerry seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
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 Nays? No nays. All right. Do we have any public comment today?
None were submitted.
All right, moving on, let's get to the meat of it. 3A, discussion, information, action items, outstanding facilities. And I'm gonna let Jeff take it away for introduce.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring up, just give me 1 minute, bring up a list that we've been working on. And the idea here really is that we wanted to start prioritizing and getting some discussion on the scope of all the facility needs that we have. And some of the facility things are obviously more what I would call important or critical than others. So can everybody see that green or no?
You might want to zoom in.
Oh.
We can see it.
Now it's off the,
Yeah, it's gone now.
Oh, nice.
you shared that, I think you're on that monitor, so you need the, there you go.
There it is.
Okay. All right. So what we did was, it's a longer document, but what we just thought that just to open discussion would be that in the next 5 years, we obviously, we put 5 years there because of, just the fact that any type of construction is a multiple year project, and some construction has to go first before other construction can happen. So the main projects we were looking to discuss and get feedback from everybody on is, one is the Isbell construction for the main building. And obviously the big question is new build or renovate the existing building. Then the possibility of a Harvest Elementary School. Should we be initiating demographic studies, architectural conceptual drawings, doing cost analysis, now, because even if the decision is not made for another year, by the time the drawings go through DSA and we do construction, you could be looking 4 or 5 years down the road before it actually can open up. And then of course we have the different high school projects, the band room, the pool. We have a need for more CTE class rooms. And then of course, upgrading the cafeteria and the cafeteria actual kitchen, as well as the cafeteria seating area. And then Renaissance. Renaissance is at capacity and actually over capacity right now as far as the number of buildings they have. Plus they don't have things like a lab for science and things like that. So the question is, should we look to relocate Renaissance so that it can expand? Or should we just see if we can add to the existing location like a portable, but turn the portable into a lab? And then the elementary facility upgrades to meet the enrichment program needs as well as the grade configuration needs. And so those are the 5 main areas that we thought we would open it up for discussion and get feedback on what everybody thinks, kind of take one at a time and see what everybody's thoughts are on it. So Dan, you want to take it over from there?
Sure. So, again, I mean, this is, so from my perspective, right, since I can put in my 2 cents, right, there's a lot on the table. We have a finite number of financial resources. So, and there are some things we know we need to do, right, and we need to address. But when we do one thing, that might impact something else. So, we've seen a lot of these come before the board, already. But what we're really trying to do here as a committee is to look at the entire picture, right? And try to, put this puzzle together, right? With a number of different options that we can take to the board that meet as many of these needs as possible and can actually be fiscally accomplished, right? So, I think, the best way to do is really to open this up kind of one by one discussions, knowing that, and, talking about how one thing may affect, something else. So, I think we should just, kind of go one by one. And this is the time for everybody to throw their, 2 cents in. So, Jerry.
Just a beginning thought is, for me, is to separate them into elementary and high school, because they're 2 different, the majority is going to come out of 2 different pots, two different bonds. So whatever we do, we need to think about things going on at the high school and things going on at TK8 as two different pots.
There's I would say that we can certainly go ahead and do that. I think the one thing that we do have to remember is that there are a few pots that
Right.
can draw from both, right?
Right,
Um,
but the bonds are separate and those are, we need to use.
right. And yeah, Todd, go ahead.
And would there actually even be a third pot too for like the harvest, because that would come from developer fees?
That is something that we can do with the developer fees. It's not mandated that we do.
Could we
it-
use, obviously not the high school bond, but elementary school, the K-8 bond, could that be used for that as well?
Mhm.
Or
Well,
general funds?
it could potentially, right? And we'd have. to
Yeah, I mean, I
discuss.
was just asking because I didn't know.
Right.
and Jerry brought up
Yeah.
a good point, so I was curious. Thank you.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have, just to be clear, we technically have three other pots of money that are not bond that would be acceptable for facilities. So there's developer fees. There's we have some bond money from the state where we've received reimbursement for prior projects. That's Fund 35. We have about 2 million in there. And then we have our special reserve for facilities, which is some other property tax that we put away in Fund 401. So all three of those could be used on any facilities.
Yes, and then there's the potential for, for grant money as well. And those would be project specific, I would assume, Kevin?
Yeah, we can always, like, not on this list is preschool, so we did manage to submit our application to start preschools at 2 of our sites for next year. So if we get that, then we're going to have to be looking at those facilities, and there's extra money we would put out. We're trying to get some grants to cover some or all of that construction. And then there's also reimbursement grants. So just like we already have a couple in Fund 35, the state bonds normally offer a certain amount of reimbursement depending on your qualification level. So I think I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but for like the Isabel project in particular, because that's a hardship project and a seismic project, the district qualifies for about $8.5 million of state bonds to do that project either way. Whichever way we handle the main building there, we would get about $8.5 million back to us that I hope we wouldn't have to wait years and years for.
I'll leave this to the group. Would it make sense to talk a little bit more about the finances, right, before we step into each one of these things, or do we can table that? Because, yeah. All right. See, Kevin, no one cares about the money. We're just going to do whatever we want.
I'll stop you when you run out. How's that?
All right, that sounds good.
Real quickly, to follow up on what Daniel said, can you just quickly tell us how much is left for the high school and how much is left for the elementary?
You're on mute.
You're still on mute.
Sorry, I'm pretty good at not doing that.
No,
I did have a presentation ready to kind of go over the highlights of this, so I could share my screen. And
let's just go for it. We're already talking about it.
so, all right, I'll go down then. Measure P has about $29 million remaining. Measure Q has $19.6 million remaining. Our developer fees has about $6.2 million currently in it. Our state facilities bond reimbursements has about $2 million in it. And our special reserve 401 has about $7.9 million already in it. So that's, and I didn't include, we do have deferred maintenance as well, but that's really not a building fund. That's just a maintaining fund.
Okay. All righty. Well, should we start talking about Isabel? Who wants to touch that third rail first.
I just know we have to get started on it. It's been tagged for a long time to be one or the other, either updated or start over. I know we have a lot of baggage with that building. So I don't know if we want to get into what our preferences are, or I just know we need to get started one way or the other. Out of all the projects, that's my top priority.
So Kevin, can you share again with us the survey?
Yeah,
Kind of just in general, I believe, Todd, you had mentioned that you believe that the staff at Isbell mostly want a new build, right? And then, so what kind of response did you get for that survey that was sent out?
yeah, I was just loading it up here so that I can be 100% factual. So the survey that we did around the end of the last school year, honestly, it might have been available around this time, and I think it was open for almost 2 months on our website, yielded 163 total responses. Of that, let's see here. We want to separate it out by an employee of Santa Paula. So the employees, we had 69 employees. They were split actually. 37 said demolish and replace with a new building. One said retrofit only the building, because that was an option to just do the minimum seismic requirements. That was an option available. So we had one of those. And then 31 opted to retrofit and modernize the building. So,
Kevin, can I step into just, I think on one of the questions, I think there was a big concern when that survey came out. On one of the questions, it said, do you want to retrofit the building with air conditioning, or do you want to have a new rebuild? And I think there was no distinction that making a new building would also be air conditioned. And so we got some feedback from our teachers after that, that they had voted because they wanted the air conditioning. And, you know, I think that, I don't remember, but I think it was something to do along the lines of that was one of the questions. So if we were going to resurvey, I think that maybe taking a look at those questions might be a good idea.
yeah. In fact, let me see if that survey is still in my Google. Because I was pulled up in Excel. I just downloaded the data regarding that one question about which had, once again, just the 3 questions, which was demolish and build new, seismic upgrades only, or retrofit and modernize was I was reading the exact language, so it was retrofit and modernize. But I agree. I mean, I do think that we probably had some issues because I could tell by the comments that some people said, you know, retrofit and modernize. And then their comment was, you know, the building really should make sure that we get air conditioning. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, they clearly didn't understand that modernize meant that it was going to get air conditioning. Or to your point, the new buildings, it didn't say new buildings with air conditioning. So I agree. We could consider a better survey. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, you know, I mean, and at this point, like, there's going to be a split. We know there's going to be a split, right? You know, in some ways, the result of the survey, at least up to this point, is less going to change any thinking on my part, right, as a board member and making a decision than, you know, if we did something like, you know, the grade configuration type of engagement, right? Especially since we only had 100 surveys, right, from non-staff. It would be nice to try to see if we can do a bit more representative. Plus, to also kind of, you know, think about this more holistically. It's not just an Isbell issue, right? You know, I kind of think like, you know, at the end of the day, we would do town halls again, right? And we would be saying, look, this is your guys' money, right? You're the taxpayers. Here are 3 options that we're going to do in order to, you know, modernize all the schools across the district, what's your input, so I think it's going to be a very different thing, also, on Isabel, I don't think at any, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that no one here just wants to retrofit. I mean, modernization would be part of what we do for that building. Oh, here's someone, iPhone. Not sure who that is, but.
It's me, Anna. Hi, guys.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I hate to say this, you can't talk in this meeting. You're not officially.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just thought I couldn't vote. I just thought you couldn't vote. Got it.
No,
Well-
but Anna, there's a chat. I don't know if you can access it on your phone. But if you have any points you'd like to make, if you throw it in the chat, I'll be more than happy to read it, or Daniel can read it out to everybody.
It's okay. It was more of a comment, but it's okay. I'll leave it for meeting time.
Okay.
Bye.
So I'll just round out what we did last year then real quick. We had 3 different categories. So we had an employee, we had a parent with a child, and a Santa Paula resident. So then just to round out, I agree as far as, I don't think that only a seismic option would be a very smart move, but we left it on there. So, but the residents with no children voted, there were 50 residents with no children, 40 of them voted to retrofit and modernize. And then the other 10 were in the other 2 options. So that was a 80-20 split between those. And then the parents of the children were more close to 50-50. We had 44 parents, 24 were retrofit and modernize, 18 demolish and build a new building, and 2 were for only seismic upgrades. So that was a 55% for retrofit and modernize and 45% for other options. So that's how it landed last year. I agree. I think we could do better, especially with the town hall style. I just think we should be clear about, maybe similar to the way we just went through the last. I think it did help to develop a survey, to work with this group to make sure that we felt like it was clear, on all fronts before we took it out to the real world, I should say. So maybe that should be the process if we're going to go to town hall regarding Isabel again.
Todd.
I would just say on like a town hall, I think it was Jerry who suggested when we did the gray configuration that kind of we did kind of like a pro and a con, right? For the different gray configurations. So maybe, if we were going to go out to the town hall or a survey, that would be something that would be important to do, would be to get together, with stakeholder groups and determine the pros and the cons, or this group can determine some of them. And that way would get the conversation maybe started. Because certainly there are probably pros and cons to both. At the end of the day, I think we're going to end up with it's going to be a pro, right? Because we're going to end up with a better facility and a safer facility, whatever way we go. But in looking at it, I think that might be part of the strategy moving forward.
In terms of how we need, I think one of the objectives here is to get to a certain number of options, right, to start fiscally sounding out, right, to see what is actually fiscally feasible, right. And so I think right, that that pros and con list is a good thing. I don't know if we have necessarily the time to do that, because we'd have to do that for each one of these. What we might want to do is, like we had done before, we had a document where during this time period, we could kind of go through the pros and cons. We can generally talk to them, I think, right here, but to be exhaustive would just take up too much more time than we have. Jerry, I think you had your hand up and then put it down.
Yeah, I agree with the town hall. It's just going to move us back about 6 months. It just bothers me that we've talked this thing almost to death. Because there's no way we can get them in before the end of the year. And so I don't know, what's our timeline? Where are we just gonna have everything ready to go at the first of the year, or what's everybody thinking?
David,
Well, I don't know if I can necessarily answer Jerry's question, but I will say, coming out of the last round of town halls that we had, I think it was pretty clear in the number of families who are leaving us for those middle school years, possibly coming back for high school, and maybe not. I think it was very clear, and I was in every single one of those town hall meetings, and it's very clear that we need to do something drastically different with Isabel. And it's not just about the teaching, it's not just about instruction. It is the overall ongoing reputation of the school, whether it's warranted or not. We have an opportunity to really do a makeover here. And so I think we've got to take that into consideration. We might save money on the front end by doing a retrofit or a remodel, but is that going to rebrand Isabel enough to get those parents to come back to the school? Or would a complete makeover, a completely new building, do that for us and give us that opportunity to start fresh? I will say this, I mean, I've seen remodels done down through the years, and I don't think they age well. 10 years from now, it's going to look like we need another remodel, especially on an old building like that. That's just an opinion. Maybe we're not giving opinions, but that's just kind of where I stand. But I think we've got to seize this opportunity to really do something different at Isabel. And I think that was very clear in the last town hall meetings.
okay, Jeff.
I think also when we do the pros and cons, or when we start talking about this, I think it's important that we give the staff's thoughts on the problems with the layout of the building and the layout of the courtyard and the sight lines and the different areas of Isabel. And because when you do when you renovate or you do a modernization, you have the same footprint, and if you do a new build, you have an opportunity to build it the way you want it and to recreate the actual layout of the entire school the way you want it to go. Obviously certain buildings would stay, but we'd be able to move portables, we'd be able to widen the sight lines, we'd be able to do a lot of different things with a new build, where in another one you would have respect. And I think there's more to the building than this. There's no bathrooms on the second floor, and the classrooms really aren't good and everything. I think the layout of the actual campus is also a little bit of a problem. And Todd, I don't know if you can speak to that, but that's what I've heard from a bunch of staff.
Okay, Mark.
I think Mark's going to do that for us.
Right. So I definitely agree with Mr. Weinstein about some of the changes that could happen with a rebuild. I think some of the problems that do exist at Isabel are a problem of geography, if you will, of the construction of the campus, and just the way traffic has to flow through narrow spaces creates more potential for issues and things like that. So I would definitely agree with that. I also don't want to step on toes or anything either, but my thought is, if we have settled the grade reconfiguration, what we want to do with that, because I do think if we're going to ask the public their opinion on costs of building a new school, we kind of need to know how big the school is going to be and how many students are going to be at that school before we're saying, here's how much it's going to cost and here's what that's going to be. So I'm not sure what has to come first. But I do think we need to have that consideration for that before we have the town hall meeting.
You know, in terms of the timeline, right? You know, I mean, I get it. I'm sensitive to it too, right? I would like to see us make the decision on what we're doing with all of the facilities by the end of this, you know, school year, right? June. I think that's maybe that's too aggressive, right? But I don't see, you know, unless the staff goes, no way, right? You know, I would like to see that. You know, in terms of making the decision on Isabel, right? You know, the board has talked about it, and the board is kind of split. We didn't make a decision one way or the other whether we wanted to retro or to modernize or to, you know, rebuild. So, you know, I guess we as a committee right now could say we're recommending that you tear it down and start from scratch. We could, right? And then we on the next board meeting on the 11th, the board could vote to go through that process. That would accelerate the timeline, right? I mean, does the committee want to make that recommendation? So Jerry, you have your hand up.
I disagree with everything that's said. We've basically, first of all, I don't want it to come up the first meeting in May because I won't be there, but the second meeting in May would be good. I'm just going back to what I've read is the opportunity of a lifetime has to be taken during the lifetime of the opportunity. And I think we have the opportunity, just like Dr. Moore said, is to just change the perception of that school. We want it to be the best in the county, best in the state. We don't want any of the negativity hanging on from the last several decades. Whether it's deserved or not, it's there. It did come out in so many of the town halls that I listened to. The parents were adamant about that building. We could really change education here in Santa Paula and make that the shining star that every student in this town would have the opportunity of going there, and make it someplace they want to go instead of want to stay away from. I would love to have this come up to the board. We need to discuss it. We've kind of tiptoed around because such a great connection with Chris, that and several people on the Historical Society and the older people in town that have better memories of that building. But so much has been changed from the original building, et cetera, et cetera. There could be a long list of pros and cons. But I do think before we leave, in whether it's the last meeting in May, the meetings in June, if we could have a decision made before July so we can get started working on the things we need to do to be ready. Because the longer we put this off, it's another year now. Those kids, that building something needs to be done, and it's such an opportunity to really change. We're rebranding the elementary schools to make them exciting to be there. Kids wanting to go to school, we want that for Isabel. A brand new building, I think, would put us on the right track to change the perception of our now junior high.
Okay, Jeff. Jeff, you had your hand up.
Got on mute here. So my question really is for Daniel and Jerry. So obviously I came in and the survey had already been done in May. I think you guys did that facilities presentation where the survey was shown and all that kind of stuff. Do you believe that we need a lot of like town halls or communications, or have the board really much heard everything, you know, all the different sides and things like that, you know, because I'd hate to see us start over with new surveys and new town halls. And like Jerry said, take 6 months to get the same information that the board has already heard, you know, in the previous year. So that was just my question in general.
My sense, well, my sense of it is that, you know, I don't think we were as diligent as we were with the grade configuration, right? I think that there's a lot of people that don't know that we're thinking about, you know, what we're thinking about with Isabel, just because I think it was a different time, right? And the town halls really was a different way of getting information. That said, I don't necessarily think that has to stop us, because there was board meetings about this. It's not that the information wasn't shared at some level, right? I think it's a question of what this committee wants to propose, right, to the board. Kevin.
Yeah, so at one of the board meetings a little bit later on, as we were talking through the CEQA process and the timelines between the two different options, but mostly the CEQA process, I think we did kind of establish that process really does offer a lot of opportunity for input from the community. And, you know, plans need to be posted, public hearings need to be had. We know from our board meetings, we have public hearings, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody shows up, but through that process, we can choose to go, you know, above and beyond with that reach out and try to, and do our town halls within that process. And so I know that the board was kind of in agreement at one point last year that, yeah, we could probably do that. But I know we haven't, while we've worked with Meridian Consultants to prepare for CEQA as much as we can, the holdup right now is we need to identify, we need to issue a design contract. So we need to go out to RFP to architects and get a design contract for our proposed project, if that be a new building. So I don't know if this committee wants to propose to the board that we should move forward with design, or but that could be an option.
So when I was talking to Jeff about preparing for this meeting, you know, we're later on in the meeting, we're going to show 3 different options of facilities, and we're going to tinker with that and do whatever, right? You know, if it's the feeling of this committee that we should be proposing that we do new, I would say that, okay, we have 2 options that say we're doing new because that's really the preference, right? But there should always be that 3rd option or that other option that we're not going to, because I don't feel it's the right of this committee to usurp, you know, the board, right? And there was enough, we weren't unanimously saying, let's tear it down, right? We need to have that discussion as a board, right? Sure, we can propose that, yes, we think that doing new is the right way to go, but here's an alternative if we don't do that, right? And I do think that discussion does have to be, you know, in light of all the facility work we're going to do, because it will make a difference in terms of our budget. Because a brand new school, right, is going to cost more, right? Which means even if it's $4 or $5 million difference, which isn't a ton, but it's some, and that means that's $4 or $5 million of work that we can't do later on. John, did you have your hand up at some point? I'm sorry, it came down. Sorry about
No, that's fine. Well, I wanted to make a comment on the surveys. You know, we talked about, Jerry had mentioned about the timeline. If we extend the timeline, I think if you went back out and redid surveys, you're going to pretty much get the same kind of result. We've done a lot of surveys, and no matter what you do, you always end up kind of back to the same beginning where your initial thought was. So I don't know if you do another outreach with surveys for whether to retrofit or build new, I think you're going to get kind of the same results. So I don't know if it's like you were saying, Daniel, about presenting some things maybe with a new build out or something. that may be the better way to go than to try and restart again and do a complete outreach to the community, because I think you're going to get the same results and it's just going to extend the time. So, and I've learned that through past history through the chamber and other things that we've done. So it's just, I don't think we want to extend the time that much longer.
Todd?
It seems in listening, we've had a lot of people who have, it seems to me, interest in a new building and a new design. And I would echo and share those. That would be my preference. But I wonder if there's anybody who on this committee who doesn't feel comfortable or wouldn't feel comfortable making that recommendation, like Kevin said, to start a design for a new building or something like that, because we haven't really heard anything on the flip side why we wouldn't want the new building. I'm certainly not going to make that case, because I think that I would, for many of the reasons stated here already, would prefer the new construction, but I just wanted to be inclusive if there was anybody who did want to speak to that side.
I'll jump in real quick. Just, you know, in the past, it's been my preference to retrofit and remodel that building, mostly because of I do think that it could have great results. I think we would be able to do it well, but also because it's a less expensive option. So, however, the choice of the district to move the sixth graders off the Isabel campus back down means that we can design a new building, a new school with less classrooms. So we won't need the 23 classrooms that are in that main building. And so we can control some of the costs by building a new main building and the number of classrooms that are the right size for our new grade span configuration. So that being said, I think I'm more apt to lean towards a new building now, knowing that we can control those costs.
So I'm going to speak for the, sorry, of course I'm going to speak, right? Sorry if I startled you, Jeff. For the side of keeping it, right? Now, personally, I have in public said that I would love to see a new building, and that hasn't changed. But, you know, I do want to be fair, right, to that side, right? And again, the committee can recommend, you know, whichever way we want to go, and that's fine, right? We are who we are. But, you know, certainly the historical aspect of it, right, is something that we will, as a district, have to contend with, right? There is a strong, you know, feeling among some of the residents, right, that Isabel should remain, you know, as is. With the modernization, sure, fine, right, but that the building should stand. Part of the context, right, is our old library that was a gem, right, and was torn down. And, you know, that was 50 years ago, and we still hear it about it. I don't have that sort of, you know, loss, you know, or feeling towards Isabel myself, right? But I know people do. You know, if there is a differential in cost, right, that's something too. You know, so I think you can't discount, you know, those things, right? And I did want to at least give voice to some of those concerns. You know, the other thing is you know, that I've heard is that, you know, put Isabel in a new building or not, Isabel's still going to be Isabel, right? You know, and I think that that's something that we need to actually, you know, take to heart, because just changing the building isn't going to change things. There is a context for that change. Will it certainly help? Yeah, I believe so, right? But if that's all we did, that wouldn't be enough. David, you had your hand up, I think, or did you put it down?
No, I did. I just think it's important to make sure that when we're having this discussion, and I certainly haven't been quiet about my opinions as far as what we need to do, but I think the discussion has to go beyond while money is a factor and funding is a factor, it has to go beyond that. What is best for kids? And are we going to be an education system, a school system that competes? Because we are competing. We're competing for students, whether we want to accept that or not. Or are we going to be curators of historic buildings? And I think we need to not disrespect the other side, but our students, what do they need right now in order to move forward into the kinds of work and jobs and things that they're going to be doing? And do we have the facilities to accommodate that? And so I really think that has to be a part of the discussion, along with whether, what the cost savings of doing either one. I just think we need to make sure that we're keeping that the focus as well.
Okay, Jerry.
I totally agree with Dr. Moore. And I like, Daniel, that you brought up the other side, because I know, like I already mentioned, Chris has his feelings toward it, and I don't know about the other board members. But we have some beautiful historical buildings in town. And like Dr. Moore said, as a board member, I'm here for the kids. I want a new building. I want a new outlook on it. And it's not just the building. A building is what the students and parents and town people and people looking to move to town see. We need something beautiful and inviting. We know that it's not just the building, it's the education and what happens at Isbell or has happened in the past. But having a new building there and then new expectations, and with Dr. Moore's help, just to reinvent next generation instruction and incorporate it for our kids. It's not just a building, it's the whole attitude of education that happens in that building, and the outlook, and how we can start over and fresh and not carry that decades old perception with us. It's more than just the building. I ran for school board to do the best for kids and not just keep a building in town for the sake of keeping a building. I just think it offers so much opportunity for our district to, like I said, rebrand ourselves and just turn into one of the top schools in the county. So I really would like to see, even like if it went for information at this next school board meeting, because I think everybody on the board knows how I feel. I don't have to be there for that. And if we vote on it one way or the other at the last in May, and we can get started over this summer on what we need to do next steps. I would hate to see us drag this out. I think school board members already have an idea of what they would like. And just hearing from our committee and all the people that have spoken up, that the other 3 board members, if they're, I think they might all be listening, we could have that discussion, or 4 of you have that discussion the first meeting and then vote on it the second meeting, one way or the other. Or if it's, we need to drag it out. If we need to talk about it some more, that's fine too. But I think we need a decline, and we need to move on it.
My own opinion is that, we have talked about it, right? We already did decide to go through the CEQA process, right, last year. I don't have any problem saying, look, our intent is to, tear down and rebuild, and use the CEQA process for that community input. I know I would feel comfortable if that the committee recommended that that's what we say we're going to do, with the intent of, putting that stake in the ground, Jerry, at the end of May. and saying, this is the process we're going through and we're going to do it. Because you're absolutely right, right? I mean, a year later, we need to do it, right? It's our responsibility to get things done. So I'm going to shift this conversation a bit, right? Because we've talked a lot about ISBO, and it is the biggest one, right? But we do need to go through that list, all of those things. Jeff, I think the next one was it Harvest?
It was Harvest, and the idea for the Harvest School was that we should be looking at making a decision, but starting the process of a demographic study in the area, understanding what construction is going to be happening, and start working on architectural conceptual drawings for a cost analysis, and then we can start. And by the time that's done, we would have a good idea of financing options. So luckily for us, the amount of developer fees coming out of the Harvest area in general is pretty significant. But even if we were not to use those developer fees directly in financing, whatever property taxes come out of those areas could easily, pay for whatever, COP bond or whatever it took to close the gap of what we're willing to use of existing funds and what still might be needed. And then, of course, Luminaires as well as Lewis Brothers builders really want us there desperately. And so, it would also give us an opportunity during the conceptual drawings and demographic study to sit down with them and see what they're willing to do for us. Because, I mean, just things like we were talking the other day, just to put a sidewalk around a school is $1 million. So if you have an 8 acres and you're putting a sidewalk around that 8 acres so people can run it, it's going to cost you $1 million. And so, what are they willing to do as far as the streets, the sidewalks, the utility, bringing utilities into our parcel and those type of things. And then we'd have a much better idea of what's possible. And then the board would have an idea of, what the expectation of number of students moving into that area would be.
Gary.
Just really quick, Jeff, do we know, or are we leaning one way between the TK 6 or TK 8?
Well, I think if we do a Harvest Elementary School and the board decides a TK 8 for Harvest Elementary School, then I think we would have to rethink Bedell being a K8 also, right? So, geographically, but that would be stuff that the demographic study would tell us of where those kids are located, and are most of them going to be located near Bedell but Harvest. But yeah, I don't think we would need a third TK8, so I think that we would then have to make the decision of making Harvest Elementary School a TK based on the number of students that are going to be living in that area, or Bedell the TK8. But I definitely, and that's really just dropping, four more classrooms, which is usually just one building, one, portable area. So it wouldn't take much to, start the process, and then through the process, have the board make that determination.
So Harvest, what else do people have to say about a school in Harvest?
And just a reminder, and I'm not trying to push for anything in particular. I just want to make sure all the information that if we were to start a demographic study over the summer and do architectural conceptual drawings with input from the community and different things like that, and do a cost analysis, we're still looking probably, 3.5 years out before that school will open. So it's a long process to go from, just going from dirt to having an opening ceremony at a school. It's 3.5, 4 years. So
Todd, you had your hand up first before Jerry. Jerry, I'll get you next.
I would just say that, it's always good to be prepared, right? And so I say, in being prepared, I think this is the strategic planning committee. And I think at some point we need to look at the overall use of our facilities to make sure we're gonna get maximum use of them all. Because likely we're gonna be adding many TKs, right, over the next few years. We're putting sixth graders back, and some sites currently have enough room for sixth graders and some don't. And so I would just ask, in this whole plan with building schools, are we going to look at the map to look where kids are going to go? Because at some time, I know nobody probably wants to take on the task of that, redrawing the boundaries. But now that we're kind of reconfiguring some of the schools and, considering a new school, it would be nice, I don't know what would be the closest, if it would be Phil or if it would be Vidal, but, maybe to ease the burden on like Phil, which is overcrowded, maybe some of those kids that are close to Harvest would also end up going to a new school. So I just think that all that probably needs to be taken in consideration to make sure we're right size, not just for that school, but for all the schools.
Jerry.
Kind of going along with what Todd just said, I'm thinking, I don't have anything against the planning for it, etc. But just thinking that a year ago we had the discussion of combining schools because of all the empty seats in classrooms, and then to turn around and the next year look into building one. We really need to think this through on, are we going to have empty seats in our schools to build a new school at Harvest instead of filling our seats, etc., and worrying about the declining enrollment? I just think that, again, we really need to think that through and know what we're going to say to the public on, what? I thought you guys were combining schools and now you're building a new one. So that might look a little odd.
So what I'm going to say to that, right, is that's why none of these decisions, right, have or can be made in a vacuum, right? We've already closed a third of a school, right? Whether we admit it or not, right? Isbell's, the sixth grade, is moving away. If we do decide to build a new school, that school won't have the capacity for as many students as it has right now. So we're shedding, in a sense, excess capacity already, right? Now, and we're doing that for a reason other than just to, shed it, right? So I feel pretty confident, given my relationship with someone on the city council and the roadmaps that I've seen in terms of the expansion of housing units here in Santa Paula, that, I mean, we're almost on the books right now, of potential and, projects in flight. We're gonna have an extra 3,000 housing units. We have 9,000 right now. We're gonna grow by 33%. That's just what's on the horizon, right? I don't feel like capacity is going to be, an issue that we're going to have. But that said, to Todd's point, we do need to look at those boundaries. We do need to look at the demographics. We absolutely have to. We'd have to do that anyways in our grade reconfiguration anyways. That's part of the process we have to go through, already. So Kevin, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think just to kind of continue on the point of everybody's been making so far, I think it's about utilizing all of our resources wisely. And in order to utilize all of our resources, we need to consider all of the programs and that we're trying to offer, all the programs and what, I'm missing another word here, things that we're trying to offer. So, a good example would be preschool. So we just put in a preschool application. We're going to need roughly 6 to 8 classrooms or classroom spaces if we are able to get the preschool that we think we will and the students that we think we will. So that's a program that's going to need resources. That's a program that's going to need space. That's new to our current programs and needs of our our campuses. And so I guess I tie this back to our campuses because we only have so many. And so, and Harvest is an opportunity to add another campus. And yes, that will expand capacity of the elementary side seats that we might not need in town here, but maybe there's opportunity to reutilize our resources for expanding programs. So I think that's really where we need to consider. It's not just about, well, we don't need any more third grade classrooms, so why are we building an elementary over there? Well, because potentially we could reutilize other resources in town for other new programs that are in need of resources.
I think that that's absolutely true, right? And well put. You know, I, for one, again, you know, this isn't saying that it's going to happen, right? A study is, you know, just that, right? It's a feasibility study to see whether it makes sense and what it's going to cost, right? I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, I think that this committee should recommend that.
Good.
I'm trying to be cognizant of the time, right?
I was
You
just
know-
going to say, I have a meeting on Monday with our demographics company to kind of kick off, and I'm sure that by the second board meeting of next month, I'll probably have a contract for the board to consider to expand that demographic study.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to say about Harvest at this point before I go on to our next big bucket, which is the high school? So let's kick it off. Band room, pool, CTE classes, cafeteria, kitchen. What do we want to do?
I think one of the things that we need to first address, I mean, cafeteria could be a separate pot of money. CTE classes also has separate pots of money. The pool and the band room, you know, the pool one is upgrade our current pool, make it CIF, you know, compatible, do whatever we can there to expand it or build a new pool. I think, you know, we're looking at a difference of $5 million or so, Kevin, between fixing up and building a new pool. And then, of course, the band room, we have all seen the band room at the high school. It's woefully small and it doesn't do much for them. And I think that, you know, is something that we have to look at of what are we going to do, you know, the band room. And it's some of the, you know, we do have a little bit of movement over there. But what could we do for the band room and where would we build it and how would we build it? I think is really those two are the critical ones. And then the CT classes and cafeteria would fall into place after that. So those are my thoughts.
Wasn't the kitchen, what was the kitchen cafeteria, Moreno? What was like the base number that we were looking at? Because that wasn't going to be cheap, huh?
5.5 million.
Right. And
And
then
you know,
a new, go ahead.
These projects weren't as much about the funding. I mean, yes, the band room and the cafeteria were slated to be the two big projects in the pool. And one of the last times we kind of did a master planning, looking at the funding. But the cash is in the bank, and what's holding us up is space, is land, you know, at that. So once again, that's a place where we need to look at utilizing all of our resources regarding as far as space and land to get these all done. It's not, I don't think we're not constrained as much with funding. Also because I think that we'll be able to find maybe potentially other grants and things for our cafeteria.
Mark, you have your hand up.
It's mostly a question that I think Kevin sort of answered it. I was going to say, I know the existing band room is next to the cafeteria, and I was kind of assuming that if you were to move the band room elsewhere, that you would use that space to build a larger cafeteria. You could spread out and use that a little bit. So I guess I was thinking those two things would have to be kind of together, probably move band out, build a new cafeteria after the new band room is done. But I just wanted to clarify for that. So thank you.
Again, this is where, there's a bunch of puzzles to the piece, right? We haven't talked about Renaissance yet, but, and maybe we should include Renaissance in with the high school discussion, right? Because I think it's part and parcel with it. Renaissance is, what is it, 4 portables right now off of Jones Field? 5 portables off of Jones Field. There's really not that much room for expansion there. Is there any room? I don't know if there is,
No.
right?
No, not really.
You would have to drop it on the blacktop that currently has the basketball courts for Renaissance. So you would take away their outdoor space, in other words, and you would drop another portable or 2.
No, they got the field right next door, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my personal opinion on this is that, while I think that there can be synergies, right, for having Renaissance right by the high school, I don't know, one, if there's really ever been synergies. It's been there forever, right? How much does Renaissance and the high school interact? But even so, that space is concerning, right? If Renaissance could be located somewhere else and we can capture that space back, that would help in terms of, our space constraints for the band room possibly. So I know that I think that that's a smart thing to look at. Now, where Renaissance goes is an open question. And how much that would cost, right? Because that would be, something that would definitely have, a significant amount of money towards it. I think the one thing that in terms of the money, Kevin, right? Because we had the pool discussion, right? Not too long ago, right? A month ago or so. If that, and I know that there was at least, some voices on the board that were like, let's build a new pool, right? That's $5 million. I don't have a real good sense, right now of whether we can, and this is where I think we're going to go over finances, like how much of that takes out of measure Q, RPQ, right? It's Q, right? I think it's Q, and then leaves for the band room and the cafeteria. Plus there's other things, right? There is maintenance that right now was slated to come out of the bond money. I'm kind of hoping that we don't do that and take it out of deferred maintenance instead, like the painting project, right? Is that coming out of deferred or is that bond money right now?
Right now, it's bond money, but we can still, until we close the books, we have the opportunity to change that.
Okay. What do other people, what does other people sense? Jerry?
Where do we stand on the gym and the library? And those are kind of just hanging out there in my mind. Has that money already been set aside, or where are we on those projects?
Yeah, well, on the master planning spreadsheet that we've looked at a few times and was shared with the board when we were discussing the pool, we do have money set aside within Q for the library literacy center and for the gym seismic work that will be coming to the board pretty soon. So that money is set aside. I can share that. I can share this spreadsheet here if you want to see it now.
That'd be fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't that part of that 19.6 million.
Well, it is.
So it hasn't been taken out yet?
So here's where we were at. And I think the 19.6, I had taken some money out when I said 19.6, but this kind of has the other thing. So if it's not here, so this is how much is here as we were considering all these projects. 20.4. this one, sorry, I end up with a few versions of this. So this one's in the works. This one's in the works. So we don't have the opportunity to really change those numbers. And so all of the rest of these projects, we can all still move around. And then we still have about $900,000 cushion right now as we're considering these this way. So this is kind of what I think we should probably go one more zero.
Oh, that's going to be cheap.
There we go. You know, something like that. And then what we really need to do is that library, the cafeteria, we need to consider something else. So we have you know, $1.2 million remaining. We could put here for remodel or renovation, but we can kind of just keep it and see what other money we can find, whether it's matching money or other places. And then this modernization money, to your point, we might be able to free up some of this modernization money if we shore up our deferred maintenance fund. So if we down this to something like, man, I'm short zeros today. Then we could still have, and then we're even.
How much is the pool? Is 6 million really like feasible for the pool?
Yeah, I think 6 million. I think we could probably get something done in 6 million with 6 million. And there's still, with all these projects, as we get underway, there's lots of community discussions, and you know, I think it would be our intention to work on leveraging our money as much as we can. Just later this week, I'll be meeting with the YMCA and the city again on the pool management for the summer, and so that might also help us start having discussions about how they might help us. I know that the Ventura County YMCA or Ventura YMCA helped Fillmore with their pool when they were in need of money to build a new facility. So, you know, there's opportunities to raise money.
You know, this is where I think, you know, the intention is for the next meeting that we have here is to really dive deep into the finances, right? To see like, okay, if we, you know, recommend a path of action, right? This is how this would affect, you know, what pots of money we have or how we can finance or what have you. So we will be going into this more in depth. I don't know what we want to do at this point in terms of the high school in this meeting, right? Other than kind of highlighting the fact that, you know, these are the projects that are out there. You know, there is a finite amount of money that we have in that bond. You know, I know that in that board meeting with the pool, you know, I had asked to see, you know, updated numbers because some of those are pretty old. Like the band room, you know, I don't believe right now that we can build a band room for $5.5 million. But you know, those would be numbers that would be good to, well, necessary for us to have, you know, updated before we can make real recommendations as to what to do. We do need to think about the priorities, you know, whether the cafeteria / kitchen is lower than, say, the pool or the band room, or if there needs to be a reordering of that. You know, because again, I think that that's part of what our committee's charge is that, you know, there may be some, we may not be able to have it all. You know, so we're going to have to say, okay, well, you know, you can go in this direction or this direction or this direction, or good luck. But you are going to have to make, I think we're going to have to make choices, you know, I mean, that's my hunch, you know, when the new numbers come back.
Yeah, potentially. It just depends on how much we can leverage, you know, money for any other particular projects, you know, to the superintendent's point, the Harvest School, you know, we'll have to have meetings with the developers over there to see, you know, how much they might help us with that project. Could free up developer money, which can also go to any of these projects. So we are in the process of firming up numbers. So we're working on the expanded pool. We're working with 2 different groups to get some proposals. So we'll have some more firm numbers for the board to consider on the expanded pool here soon. And then we can always ask Llewellyn and Moody to take a look at the band room. I guess one of the questions has always been, where would the band room go? I see under Renaissance, you have relocate on there. So I think that if we were to find a more suitable location for Renaissance, as that program expands and beyond its footprint, maybe that would be a very attractive place for a band room. So then the next question would be, where could Renaissance go?
So in terms of Renaissance, do we see that as, a need, or in that this should be part of that whole kind of thinking as well? I mean, that's what I kind of stated that we advocating for, but I don't know if anybody really said much about Renaissance.
I think that the Renaissance is a big question right now. So, and that's resources, that's land that we're limited on. One of our big major limitations, probably more than money, is our space and land, particularly at the high school. So I think we definitely need to consider if we can get that space back for the high school, because then that means we can move forward with using that space. So where might Renaissance go? We're considering, we have 8.3 acres at Harvest, or if we use that for elementary, it might free up resources in town. So we can consider it either at Harvest or at another facility in town, I would say. That would be my suggestion. Not to rip the Band-Aid off anything.
Gary, go ahead.
I heard at some point they were thinking, one idea was somewhere on the footprint of Isabel. And I know we have to do something with the maintenance buildings. They're falling apart, for lack of a better word. Has there been any consideration of moving maintenance and putting them, because it does have access from the back? Just an idea. I don't know what any discussion has been of any place else to move it, but we've heard that that's an option to move it, but I haven't heard any suggestions of where to put it.
I think that we looked at Isabel, to me, for Renaissance, whether it be at where the M&O is located right now, or whether it be on another part of the outfield, on the field, depending on what we do with the building, the reconstruction of the building or a new building, and how we relocate, the portables, and how much portables are going to be used, and how many portables we can pull, and what kind of land does that free up overall. But one of the things we do know is that, and I'm sure Todd and Mark, you know better than I do, we have some storage units right near the main building that is maintenance storage units. I don't know what else to call them, right? So those would definitely, we would want to move those out. We also have a warehouse at the high school, kind of a maintenance place warehouse at the high school that we would also love to consolidate into a new M&O area. But then again, much like Renaissance, where would we put the M&O, department? Because they need a warehouse. They have a lot of equipment. It has to be secured, and is there existing area, maybe even purchasing, a plot of land and dropping some, prefab buildings on it for them. So that's something that we definitely, I think we need to consider. Renaissance is pretty much capped. It takes 125 students, and there's a waiting list of at any time between 10 and 25 students waiting to get into Renaissance. And that doesn't include the current amount of students at the high school who are in what, to be kind, a special program with Cyber High and taking classes and different things like that, that actually should be not under the high school, it should be under Renaissance. So, you know, we definitely need to consider what Renaissance will look like with a new leader going in there, a dynamic leader, you know, a leader like Lydia. I think it's going to grow exponentially very quickly. I mean, David, you've been an alternative education principal, and once the reputation changes and people see it as an avenue to graduate in a great way, it grows pretty quickly.
Todd.
I just think we should be aware, we've had a lot of conversation here about, you know, why we should build a new building at Isbell to rebrand it and to make it a great place. And, you know, I've been here for 23 years, almost half my life. And obviously I think it's a pretty good place, or I wouldn't have been here this long. And I've had a lot of great experiences here. So but I'm not the one you have to sell, right? And so I would just wonder if moving a continuation high school on the same footprint as a middle school that we're trying to revive, it would be a great idea. But I echo the concern that Jerry has. Where then, right? You know, what are options? And you know, none of our elementary sites are big enough to share. And I would echo the same concern, right? Would you want a continuation school with those older kids to share a campus with those younger kids? So I think it is a really hard question, because then the other thing is, we certainly wouldn't have room at Isbell for the next 4 or 5 years while we're doing construction and using the fields to house the remainder of the kids. So you're just kicking the Renaissance can down the road another 5 or 7 years before you could probably even move them. So I think there needs to be a brain trust put together, probably, right, to figure out where it could go or what it could do. And, you know, I know there's been talk, like right now, Renaissance is a normal school day like the high school. And I'm not sure that's the model that the continuation schools throughout the state of California traditionally use. And I don't know what those models look like differently, but I wonder if the amount of time that you're required to be in those programs, if through the new leadership at that school, if those schedules were changed, could there be more of split schedules for those kids where you may be able to accommodate more kids because they're not all on campus at the same time? And I literally don't know, because I just know a little bit about the time commitments required for the continuation high school. So I know we're running short on time, Dr. Sandoval, but those were just a couple thoughts in my head.
Look, and it's pretty clear, right, that we're not going to get through everything, right? You know, and that's okay, right? You know, kind of just moving forward quickly, because I don't think we're going to resolve this issue right now, and we don't have to. But there is also the elementary, right, facilities upgrades, right, for the enrichment. And given that we're having design day tomorrow, I don't want, we should at least say a statement, right, that, you know, we understand that, you know, the results of that might impact what we do here, right? So we can't talk about that fully because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, but that's absolutely something that's, you know, a consideration, right? Because we know that we want to put resources to that. So all of these things, trying to get them together, you know, is tough. You know, given that we're coming short on our time, you know, I would like to entertain maybe some sort of motion so that we can at least have some action that's come out of today. We are not going to go through the options that Jeff had put together. We could do that next meeting, and we can do that with financials. We were thinking about making a subcommittee to go over the financials, but it just seems like this is going to work fine for that. You know, we all are interested in the money details anyways. But we also know that this is there's a time constraint here, right? We want to all get this done. So, just know that that's coming. So anyways, are there certain things that we think we accomplished today that we can, take as recommendations to the board? So like, for instance, on Isbell.
So are we looking for a motion to recommend new construction at Isbell, or a design team to move forward to look at what that might look like? Because that's what it sounded like our conversation was earlier.
I think part of that conversation was exactly what Todd said, doing the design and allowing the CEQA process to determine whether or not and getting that feedback from the community about the historical value, the new build or the renovate during that CEQA process. Because we're pretty firm on the next part of the CEQA process is giving them an expectation of enrollment there. And then having them starting to go through the impact to the surrounding area and humans in the surrounding area for the CEQA process. So maybe something to do with, moving forward with the CEQA process and allowing it to, and hiring a design team to work with, is it Meridian, Kevin, that we're using for CEQA? Work with Meridian to start that CEQA process that is going to take some time anyway to get the feedback from the community.
But with the intention that we're recommending a new build.
Yes.
Right.
So that's the motion that I would like to make, that the strategic planning committee recommend to the board the culmination of those things that Mr. Weinstein and Dr. Sandoval both just said. That we
Second.
move forward with the process and get a design team, that this committee thinks that moving forward towards a new building would be preferred, assuming all those other things are taken care of. So if someone can put that in a better phrasing, I'd be happy to second or craft that. I think that's kind of where we're going.
Jerry,
I'd like to second Todd's motion
There you go.
for what it is.
for the CEQA,
Well-
but with aiming for a tear down rebuild.
Right. We'll frame it in the minutes, the motion in the minutes, to be real clear about what it is for
They're
everybody.
clearer than the video.
Yeah, clearer than the video. That's right. Exactly.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think one other thing, another thing that we can talk about is harvest, right? And moving forward with the study as described through Jeff's presentation or comments. I'm not sure if we're ready for that yet, right? But I think that that's one place where we potentially could see something.
Would we also want to recommend, I know Jeff talked about meeting with the builders and stuff to see what other things could be thrown in to make that a better, I don't know if that would be through the same process or not.
Yeah, I mean, we can frame it as a plausibility study of, with demographics, architectural conceptual drawings, cost analysis, as well as meeting with construction firms to see what, we can get out of them.
I will make the motion, all right, to do a plausibility study, all right, on building at Harvest, elementary school at Harvest.
I'll second.
Perfect.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, two things. Were there any other action items, right, that we wanted to propose to the board for their consideration at this point?
I don't know if it's an action item, but I would really like to know if anybody sees a use for the Santa Barbara building other than just selling it. We're going to be moving classified HR to the district office by the summer, probably, we hope, right, Kevin? And once we do that, we were really knocking our heads together trying to figure out what if anything that building could be used for. And we just don't see anything other than just selling it and taking that money and putting it aside for, for all our other needs.
Is there, could we have 10 more minutes? Does anybody need to leave? All right.
I actually have a meeting at 4 o'clock in Oxnard, so I'm gonna
Oh,
be
Oxnard.
leaving right now. So I actually do, I
Okay.
was about to put it in the chat, so, but
Sure.
thank you
Okay.
guys for your time today.
Okay. Well, Mark is Todd's representative now anyway.
Mark will
so-
be here.
For 10 minutes.
No, yeah, I'm just wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that because we didn't get to it. And I'm willing to extend the meeting if we want to for a short time.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows that we've already ordered an additional building for the DO and it's going through the permit process and everything. And we were looking at actually ordering 2 or 3 more for the lower campus. Is that what we're calling it, Kevin? Lower campus? The valley of the thing in order to bring IT back, because that'll open 3 classrooms also. And so that leaves us with an additional 3 classrooms for IT coming back. And then the Santa Barbara building, which lastly we heard somewhere around $800,000, but probably is worth more than that right now, you know, for sale. The sale process takes a little while, but because we're a public agency, selling a building is a little bit more technical. I sold 9 buildings at Oxnard Union and it was no fun, but it can be done, you know, pretty well. So that would give us anywhere, say $900,000 to $1 million coming back to us if we sell the building. And we really looked at trying to figure out what we could use the building for. And really the way that building is made up, and I know a lot of you may not have been inside the building, it's just really not conducive to be any type of classroom use, educational use, or anything like that. And parking is terrible unless you park up and down the streets. So, you know, so I just wanted to see if I could get feedback, you know, because we're going to be, once we move classified HR, we're going to need to form a 7-Eleven committee, it's called, which basically makes a recommendation to the board to sell the property. And then once that's done, we have to go through a whole public notice that we have a public agency building for sale. So, you know, so, but I just wanted to see if anybody had any ideas other than doing that.
Unless you could put Renaissance there.
Nice.
Yeah.
I wish. Yeah.
M&O, I mean, it's just such a small building, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, I just don't know. I mean, I like the idea of consolidating the DO. I mean, I think it's always better if you can all be in one space.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Well,
So if we want, we could recommend, you know, selling Santa Barbara as part of this process. Hey, extra money, I'm for it.
yeah, I mean, that would be great if I'm on mute probably. No, I'm not. Okay. That would be good to go in with a motion or motion from here saying that we would like the board to consider selling the Santa Barbara building. We recommend that.
Would anybody like to make that motion?
So I'll make it.
A second?
I'll
I was
second.
like,
Mark, you can have it.
Let Mark have it.
Yes, Mark can have it.
Come on, teachers got to have some skin in the game
Absolutely.
when we get criticized by someone, right? So, all right, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, ayes have it. There you go, 3 items, 3 things.
Pretty good.
And for our fellow board members that are there, obviously you can take our recommendations and put them in the circular file. This is just recommendations. We still have to make the decisions.
Yep.
We're, you know, and we'll have lively conversations on all of them, I'm sure. Maybe not on the Santa Barbara building. That one seems pretty simple.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start there, right? Get a win in, right?
Yeah.
So are there any other things, any other recommendations at this point? Just to let everybody know, the next meeting will be, you know, kind of more looking at finances, I think, you know, looking at those options on, hey, if we take this tack, right, this is all the dominoes, right? This is what we feel are the priorities and this is how much it's all going to cost. And so that we have that's the thing that we're really going to take to the board is that big picture, you know, that we can discuss and then the board can decide, you know, well, what our priorities are, you know, for the district. But that is for the next meeting. So are we gonna schedule a meeting in 2 weeks?
2 weeks would be the 11th. If
May
that's okay
11th?
with everybody. May 11th, if that's okay.
That'll
with
be the
everybody.
day of the board meeting?
Yeah, that'll be the day of the board meeting.
I'm okay with that. Jerry, are you okay with that?
I'm gonna be out of town, so I'll be out of town for both.
Oh, that's right, you're out of town.
Yeah, I won't be
Hey.
back until the last board meeting in May.
Are you gonna be able to, would you be able to Zoom? Or this committee at least?
Um,
Having
it's
fun
from
on a cruise.
on the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's all right. All right. We just should, do we have an alternate to the committee?
We don't have an
We can-
official alternate, but we can take a volunteer from one of our existing board members.
I just would rather have 2 board members at a meeting that we might be potentially, you know, making recommendations to the board for.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we can discuss that afterwards. So next meeting, May the 11th. I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 3:39.
Thank you,
PM.
guys. Have a great
All right.
day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.